Hello and welcome to not an episode of Checkpoint Chat, but a Checkpoint Chat review. Review.
That's what we call it.
I like
That's what it's
reviewing
called
things.
now.
Yeah, I mean, no one else in the business does reviews,
No,
so we
this-
thought we'd give this a shot.
This is our niche.
I'm here as always with Matthew Figueroa. We've been playing Chorizo Petting Simulator, Far Cry 6.
Can you pet chorizo in the game? You can. I can confirm that you can.
Can confirm.
Pet him.
You heard it right here.
Mhm.
I don't know if you realized, but this is a Ubisoft original. I thought that I laughed out loud when I saw that splashed so prominently on the screen when I started the game. It's like, Ubisoft presents a Ubisoft original. I was like, oh my God. And then there was just like 10, it was like, developed by, and then there was like 10 different Ubisoft studios. I was like, just say Ubisoft et al.
Ubisoft did
And
it.
then- Yeah, exactly. We did it.
Ubi did it all. Okay, we
You
get
got that.
it.
You got that Obama awarding Obama a medal meme.
Amazing.
Like that was the beginning of this game. But yeah, we've been playing Far Cry 6. I think if you want a real Cliff Notes version of this game, it's a Far Cry. It's one of those. And I think it's one of those that has definitely taken some inspiration from what Ubisoft has done recently with Assassin's Creed. And if I recall correctly, Far Cry New Dawn, which was their sort of like spin-off
That was
standalone
the
of Far Cry
in-between
5.
one, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Which that one, I never played it, but good pal Jeff says it was sort of like a Fallout almost, more RPG-ish.
Okay.
And that's why when I started playing Fallout 6, I was like, oh, they probably learned a bit from that because, yeah, Far Cry 6 is like a light shooter RPG. I don't know how I feel about it yet, but you've played a lot more, so
Yeah,
I'd like to
so-
know what you think.
Let me just give some context here quickly on my history with Far Cry, because I think we're going to come in with very different views on the game. Because you've actually got a history with Far Cry more. Well,
I do.
You've dabbled with Far Cry more recently than I have, whereas my Far Cry history starts with Far Cry 1, which has nothing to do with the rest of the franchise. It's this weird island shooter, which later, spoiler, ends up having aliens or weird creatures. And then fast forward to Far Cry 2, which takes place in Africa, and, so on and so forth. Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4, Far Cry 5. I missed all of those. I literally played Far Cry 1, dabbled a bit with Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3, and I've since missed, the last few years of Far Cry, including the spin-offs, the one you mentioned, and there was also Primal, if I'm not mistaken, which, I mean, all
Yeah,
intents and
Primal. I
purposes,
actually forgot about Primal.
they have very similar formulas, open
Yes.
world, lots of things to tick off on the map.
I think
So yeah,
ever
it's kind of-
since Far Cry 3 established that formula, it's kind of been the same. Well, I wouldn't say the same thing, but that template has been iterated on. Like, it is
Yeah.
a recognizable template, and Far Cry 6 doesn't stray from that at all, which may
Yes.
please you or infuriate you.
Exactly.
It really depends.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at, is that I'm essentially, a newbie to the franchise to a degree, and I'm really enjoying it. It's like the whole freedom of the open world to go ahead and tick off different things or pursue objectives as you see fit. Like, I've really been enjoying my time with the game from on that front. To the point where you could, for example, drive to an objective, fly to an objective, and then when you're there, you can choose to tackle it in different ways. You can go in guns blazing, you can be more stealthy, that sort of thing. So I can't quite comment on, what does this game do differently to Far Cry 5, because I never played Far Cry 5. But I think you would be able to talk more on that, because I don't know if you actually finished Far Cry 5, but you definitely played
No,
it, which
you
I
know,
didn't.
not to linger on on previous games too much. Like, I loved 3. Like, I thought Far Cry 3 when it launched was quite innovative for the time. It like established the open world template that Ubisoft would use kind of ad nauseum with most of its other games going forward. But at the time, it was like really novel. I played a bit of Far Cry 4. I quite enjoyed that. I didn't like Far Cry 5 at all.
Yeah.
That's where I started like really bouncing off the sort of template that had been set up by Far Cry. So that's why I was a bit like cautious going into 6, and I didn't really get super excited over 6 because it looked like the same sort of thing, and to a degree it is. I don't think it's that different, but I do think the shift to a sort of like RPG structure is at least interesting, even though if I find it sort of like a bit superfluous
It's
in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it's lacking. Like I completely hear you. So for those of you who don't know, Far Cry does have some RPG elements in the sense that you can pick up different gear. You could pick up gloves, for example, that maybe give you slightly better soft bullet defense or armor defense, for example. But what I find weirdly lacking in a game like this, where there's so much to do, so many things to tick off on a map, there's no sort of skill tree, which look, people either love or hate it, but there's nothing for you to work towards, if that makes sense. So you'll sit and tick off everything on the map. You do get experience. You get an overall experience bar, which doesn't necessarily go into a skill tree. It just determines the sort of gear you can unlock and how difficult the game is, if I could call it that. Because the higher your level, sort of draws attention to you, and then the island becomes harder to navigate because enemies get more difficult. But you're not getting XP to put into, for example, there's a skill tree where I can maybe jump higher or run faster or I reload quicker. There's none of that, which I found, like, again, people either love or hate it. I'm also one to say that I don't like RPG for the sake of RPG in a game. But in this instance, it feels like it kind of could have benefited from that. Give me incentive to go tick off that side stuff that I'm getting experience to put into something, not just gear. Because when you pick up armor, you've got 4 slots, right? It kind of limits you to how you can build out your character, which I suppose is, balanced by the customization you can do on your weapons. But that's just, you'll either love it or hate it on that front.
I feel like they've just shifted mechanics around, really.
Yeah.
Like, in lieu of a skill tree, it's now like your character's determined by your gear.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's important to note that you do a lot of like gear inspecting and gear upgrading here. You have slots for like 3 weapons, and then you can also alter your gear on like your summonable car. And then this item called your Supremo, which is, for all intents and purposes, is like your character's ulti. It kind of recharges.
I never thought about it like
it recharges over time, and the more damage you do, the faster it recharges, and then you launch it, and it just does tons of damage. So yeah, listen, when I was playing this, I was getting really strong vibes of this is a first-person Just Cause game, because I mean, firstly, it's got that like South American Cuban setting,
100%, yeah,
and it is really like just about tearing shit up. Then, but at the same time, it's a pretty competent stealth game. Like,
yeah,
the thing
100%.
the thing I like doing in Far Cry is cleaning out, just your standard enemy installations, which there are many in this game, like enemy bases and anti-aircraft installations and stuff like that, that you can go in and pick off people stealthily, or just going like guns blazing with a weaponized crocodile if you really want to, because that's a thing. But yeah, I think what I liked is that the RPG stuff doesn't get in the way of me just popping people in the head and killing them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I can completely understand that. Yeah. I mean, and I must say, you touched on the stealth. A lot of games, I think you and I both will agree on this, where we'll probably both be stealthy until we're seen, and then we'll just shoot everything.
Yeah.
Which I think most players probably do play like that. But I found with Far Cry, there's almost incentive to not mess up, purely because if you are seen, the enemies are very quick to call back up, whether it be helicopters or just nearby squads. And then it is a thing of like, well, shit, I don't really want to deal with all of this, so let me be very careful, if I'm approaching this stealthily.
I've definitely felt like it does lean towards pushing you into stealth, because at least early on, I mean, I don't know if this changes more as you get more weapons and more powerful weapons. But at the beginning, I found that if I went loud and they managed to turn on an alarm at a base, for example, like I'd probably die. The enemies come in thick and fast, and then when you're not just trying to pop off headshots from afar, like then your sort of RPG damage mechanics come more into play, where enemies are resistant and weak to certain types of bullets. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, I think it was soft shell
It's
bullets, and then you
soft
get armor
rounds or
piercing
yeah.
ones, and
You
so
get
like
yeah.
you're incentivized to inspect enemies to know what their weaknesses are, and then kit out your guns before you go in with a good mix of the two, so you can just hop from one to the other. But I found that if I, at least early on, if I didn't disable alarms, for example, I was just being overrun if I was
Yeah.
detected. Which I guess, they don't want to make you feel like a one-man army in a sense. So
Yeah.
it kind of like balances out quite nicely.
Except I find now, so I mean, look, I don't know how close I am towards the end of the game. I think I'm nearly done. I'm like mostly done with most of the maps. Yeah, I'm strong enough that I'm not scared of anyone
Oh,
now.
okay. So it does lean
So, but
towards that curve. Okay,
yeah,
which
but
is fine. I mean, that's what
it's
these games are.
exactly it's an interesting balance though, because like I mentioned earlier, your overall level, like I guess I'll just call it your level. That sort of determines how difficult the enemies are, and yeah, there are more difficult enemies to deal with. But I found that being a high level now and having access to, I can, for example, my loadout could be I've got a shotgun with fire rounds for certain enemies, and I've got a rifle with armor piercing for other enemies, and I've got a heavy machine gun with explosive rounds for vehicles. Like I'm pretty well rounded, and that's only something you can sort of start building late in the game. Whereas, to your point, early in the game, it is literally you have soft rounds and you have armor piercing. If you get approached by a vehicle, too many enemies, like you're screwed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely a power trip. Like whether that's early or late game, because you get your Al Supremo or your Ulti, as you refer to it, pretty early, and
Very, yeah.
I kind of appreciate that, because it became a thing of like, oh no, I've seen, oh no, there's a helicopter. I don't have to run. I can actually take this thing on, which I found
You can just
quite
also Supremo
helpful.
your way out of there.
Al Supremo, you can't set your alligator on the helicopter, but you can shoot rockets at them.
I mean,
which
it
is-
would be cool if you could shoot the alligator out your El
Launch
Supremo
the
into the
alligator.
helicopter. That'd be fucking cool.
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty cool. I mean, I'm having a good time with this game so far. I'm still quite early days into it because I've been playing other things, juggling things up and down. But I think I think it's quite pretty.
It is a
Which surprised me.
very pretty game. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does really well with the whole golden hour, dusk and dawn
yeah.
lighting. And it just looks gorgeous when you're looking out onto like the ocean or into like a really dense forest. I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
I also quite like Danny. So you're given the option at the beginning of the game to choose. Your character's name is Danny Rojas, which is quite funny if you've watched Ted Lasso. Also a character called Danny Rojas there.
Coincidence? I think not.
Yeah, coincidence. But you're able to choose a male or female Danny Rojas. I chose female Danny Rojas, and I think the voice acting is really
Okay,
good.
that's interesting, because I chose male, and
Okay.
I say interesting in that it's cool that we both went different ways, because I can also agree that I really like Danny as a character. The male actor comes across as very charismatic, very likable, just eager to get things done. And yeah, I really do like the character.
There was a cool moment at the beginning of the game, which for a bit it harkened back to Far Cry 3, where you're burning down fields with a flamethrower, which I thought was a really kind of like stupidly self-indulgent callback to a game. Like in Far Cry 3, you burn down those like weed fields with a flamethrower, and like Skrillex kicks in, and it's a ridiculously stupid, amazing moment in that game. And then you do it like really early on here. It's probably like the first mission you get when you join the Liberation. And Danny like says to herself, "Feels familiar," and I'm like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" It's like so look at me. But there, in that mission as well, there's a song that plays, which is a really catchy tune, And then later on in the game, you're busy driving, and like all of a sudden, Danny was like humming the tune to that song, and I was like,
Okay,
"That's cool.
yeah.
That's a
The
neat
game's
touch." Like,
the game's got lots of attention to little touches like that. Where, like another example of that, maybe not as significant, but if you walk into an ally base, whatever, sometimes you'll find that people greet you like, "Oh, hey, Danny," and in any other game, your person's generally quiet. I found, but my Danny's like, "Oh, hey." Like they respond to people. I'm like, well, it's such a small, subtle thing, but it adds
they're a
just
far
an extra,
more personable protagonist than
exactly.
pretty much any other Far Cry. Like Far Cry 3 had one of the most unlikable protagonists I've ever encountered in a video game, and then 4 and 5 really didn't really feature at all. So Danny Reyes has a great. It almost like surprising because a lot of the marketing is, obviously focused on Giancarlo Esposito as the main villain, but I think it's kind of like overshadowed how great like Danny Rojas is just as a lead in a Far Cry.
Yeah, and also just to bounce off that, I found that so again, like I'm still fresh to Far Cry, but I know everyone knows that Far Cry is a signature mix of like it touches on very serious stuff, like, oh no, there's a dictator or whatever, but in you taking them down, there's a lot of like wackiness that ensues, whether that's your playstyle or the characters you're supporting throughout the game. But I really do, bar one or two exceptions, I really do like the supporting cast as well. Like one of the first characters you meet is Juan, who's this, this old school guerrilla who's been,
he's really
fighting,
great.
Battles across different, many different, resistances, whatever. And I really like him. I think he's hilarious, and he's not the only one. Like there's some great moments.
He literally wrote a book on revolutions, like how to instigate a revolution.
And I found it hilarious that when you load into a part of the map, which very quick because we're both playing on PS5, but there are often these tips which are disguised as quotes from Juan. It's also just such a nice touch, and I really do enjoy it. I love that side of the game as well.
I think it's got a lot of personality and a lot of character to it. And then at the same time, at least just in my limited experience, I think Giancarlo Esposito's role as the dictator of Yara, which is the fictional island the game takes place on, is harrowing. He's definitely got a sort of vibe. He's not the same as Vast, but he's got a presence like Vast. Like whenever he's on screen, you are captivated by what he's doing.
It's one of those things of like he comes across as very menacing, but it's almost it's kind of weird because it comes across as subdued, but there's a lot of intent behind what he says. It like, sorry for the comparison, but it strongly reminds me of his character from Breaking Bad, which you've always thought like it's just this dude who runs a a chicken franchise, and to realize who he is, like, oh damn, like you don't want to cross that guy, like he will screw your shit up.
It gives you that like long foreboding stare. You fucked up type thing.
That definitely comes across you where you know that he's completely wrong, but the speeches he gives and the things he says, you're like, damn. He's got a weight to him, I guess, if I could put it like that.
I'd like to know, because you've played more, how are the other sort of regions? Because the map is, I remember both of us, we were playing the sort of like tutorial island, which you spend your first like 2 or 3 hours on. And then if you happen to open up the map and zoom out, you realize that's maybe like a tenth of the map.
The map is huge.
It's massive. How is it like kind of getting around all those parts, and how varied are the different parts of the map?
So, I think each part does have distinct personality, although I use the word distinct, but sometimes it feels like there's a bit of a blur between the different, the similarities of the different regions. But getting around them is pretty straightforward, especially late in the game when you get access to some flying vehicles. I guess it's pretty easy to get around the map depending on,
what sort of flying vehicles do you get?
So you get to pilot helicopters and planes in the game, which is really cool. And I've recently just unlocked. I don't know how I unlocked it, but I've got access to. It almost looks like a little DIY copter, like a one-man, very small thing, and it's very handy because before you can't just fly around the map willy-nilly. There are anti-air gun installations around the map which you have to destroy, otherwise you risk getting shot down. But I found with the small helicopter I got, I can fly low. That I don't get threatened by air
Can
traffic
you
controllers.
can you launch your Supremo from the little one-man helicopter?
I've never tried that, but I wouldn't be surprised if you
I mean,
can.
because basically then you're essentially just cosplaying as like a gyrocopter from Dota or something at that point.
Just do a call down. But just to go back to the island itself, like, yeah, it is huge. I mean, it is quite a daunting thing when you look at that first island, you go, yeah, this is not that big. Like, I can get around the whole island in an hour or two. And then you zoom out, you go, damn,
It's
this game
huge, yeah.
is humongous. So it's broken down into, outside of the starting area, I guess there are 3 primary areas which you can tackle in any order you want. And then a 4th area, which is basically the city where Anton Castillo is. And yeah, the game, we mentioned it earlier, it's gorgeous, but the island does have flavor around it. Like, there are little pockets of very identifiable things. So, for example, I've liberated everything from a coffee farm to a television station, which is quite cool.
2 favorite things, coffee and televisions. Yeah.
And it's cool because it plays into the story. It's like, yeah, this is where they peddle their propaganda. Let's take the TV station, or this is how they make profits. Let's take this coffee for ourselves, which is quite cool.
It kind of like
yeah.
that seems to be established as the core progression. Like, you liberate small pieces of districts and then the whole district becomes liberated, which again reminds me of a Just Cause in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's no progression on that front. For example, like, you don't get told like, oh, in order to reach the main part of the game, you need to liberate 5 camps in this part of the map. But in doing the main campaign, you'll find that you do take certain strategic things, and narratively, it all comes together to get you closer to Anton.
I also saw that some of the areas they're not gated. Like, you're never unrestricted.
No.
From moving to one area or the other, but some have like a sort of player level associated with them.
Yeah.
So you're incentivized to have gear of that level.
Exactly. So that's what I mentioned earlier. Throughout the game, you're getting you've got your play level. But what's interesting, so when you start the game, you get off the tutorial island, we'll call it.
Tutorial island, love it.
And you can go to any of the first 3 areas. They're all gated to the sense of like, you need to be player level 3 to do this part of the island. So I thought, like, that's weird. Like, I'm going to go do one of them, then I'm going to be way too overpowered to come back to the other ones. But they scale with you. So
it's super confusing as well, because there's a mission on the tutorial island that requires you to go into an area that's level 4.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember, because I got absolutely destroyed as soon as I tried to just drive through there. So
yeah, I think what they do to balance it out, to start to discourage you from going to levels that you aren't meant to be in, I think they just give the enemies a huge damage buff.
Yeah, it seems like it's very hard to kill them. Yeah,
yeah.
Like, even a headshot sometimes doesn't completely kill them.
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of enemies have more health and they hurt a lot more. So they hurt you a lot more.
You die pretty quickly in this game. I don't know, does that ever change? Because at least in the beginning, I'm like dying quite frequently.
I don't know. Like, for me, it's touch and go, where sometimes it feels like I can take a lot of bullets. Like, I can take my hats off to the game. Just quick sidebar: the sound in the game really good. I love the sound of the weapons and the reloads and that. But when Danny's getting shot, you can hear the bullets like connecting. And it feels like I can get hit a lot before I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna die.
And
but
equally, when she heals herself, it's very like when she clicks a finger back into place, or like sears her skin with a cigar, it's quite gruesome.
Yeah, again, Far Cry, great combination of it's super serious, but it's also super not serious at times.
Yeah.
When you smoke a cigar and you like cauterize a wound with it.
Yeah, cool. I got health. Yeah. Whoop, whoop,
Yeah. But yeah, there are times when I get surrounded and I die very quickly. But that, I don't know, that depends on the situation, I guess. I haven't found the game to be unfair, if I could call it that. Like, I've never gone into an area and gone like, how the shit am I meant to do this? It's a thing of like, no, let me play smart, or never a thing of, man, like, I shot that dude 3 times in the head. How is he still alive? It's not that at all, which is cool.
It's definitely like a playground designed for you to
Yeah.
have a power fantasy within.
Exactly. Yeah. I think ultimately what I wasn't expecting, I mean, again, I know I keep saying this, but coming back to Far Cry after, many, many years, I'm strongly reminded of Grand Theft Auto in the sense that you can really get into a car, you can get into a plane, and you have lots of tools to just mess around with. You even have a meter of like, how much chaos are you causing? Well, if that meter fills up, you're going to have more people coming to try kill you, which I just didn't expect, to be honest. So, yeah.
I think one final thing, I found it very odd, but I want to know what your perspective is. How do you find the first-person horse riding?
It's jarring, if I could call it that.
It feels strange.
It's
like
too responsive.
That horse controls like a car.
Like that.
My God, you can flick on a dime there. Yeah,
that horse's handbrake turning, going up mountains, jump. It's. I think the best way to describe it, it's too responsive. Because
there should be a race mode DLC for just horses. I would say
you do get racing in the game, but I don't know if you get horse racing. In the game.
My God, what a missed opportunity! Like drifting around corners with those horses would be fantastic.
But I completely get what you mean. It feels weird. Not in a bad way. It just feels
odd.
Here's the way to explain it. It's arcade horse
yes,
riding.
It really is. It's like if Red Dead Redemption's horses were like Gran Turismo. This is like burnout levels of horses. I would say so. Also, I find that, and I don't know if it's specifically because they're on a horse, but every time I'm driving a car and I come across an enemy that's on a horse, they will just run into the middle of the road and I will hit that horse and feel very bad.
No, I haven't had that happen to me.
So maybe I'm just a bad driver.
I have seen some hilarious physics in the game, which should not be happening.
It's par for the course, yeah.
Yeah, like I had one instance where I was busy driving my car and a bull charged into me. I don't know where it came from. And then I was like, oh shit, climbed out my car and the bull was just stuck in my car. I've got footage of it, and it was hilarious. I'm share it
the animals in this game, I mean, you still have familiar loops, like you've got to hunt animals for certain upgrades, as far as I can tell.
I think not so much for upgrades as much as you get buffs. If you build... I stand to be corrected, but I don't think I've been tiered off by any animal requirements.
Oh, you know what I'm thinking of? You can sell animal parts for parts that you use to upgrade. Yeah. But it's not like the Far Cry 3 where it's like you need to hunt 10,000 of these animals to craft a pouch or something. Yeah. But that said, like the animals hit hard. Like I was invading the base and 2 warthogs decided to fight with me and they killed me. And I was like, what just happened?
I just went on a hike up a path one day and I was attacked by one of the cat creatures.
Like
I don't know if it was like a jaguar, puma, or... Oh, wow. Yeah. He's like, okay.
Who's you get companions in Far Cry 6, obviously. The earliest one you get is the crocodile. I forget his name now.
I can't remember its name either.
But how many do you kind of get throughout, and which one is your favorite?
I've only unlocked 2, so one being the crocodile and the second one being Shirisu. But I think there's a total of 5, if I'm not mistaken. Because if you look I think at the
there
menu,
is a puma as one of them, actually.
Yeah, they're grayed out, but I think one of them is a chicken.
Amazing.
Because of course. But yeah, Shirisu's a good doggo.
A little firecracker. Yeah, real good. I do like at least the introduction for the crocodile you get is so ridiculously violent and gruesome that I just couldn't help but laugh. But it was it's so on point with this game. Like, I half want to say that it's trying to be serious at times, especially when Anton is on screen. But it's so self-aware of its ridiculous nature.
Yeah, it's this balance of it's super serious, but it's not.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Because it's so over-the-top violence.
Yeah, exactly.
Unnecessarily so for something to be taken seriously. Even just the melee kills are so...
Oh my God.
They revel in how gratuitous they are.
Unnecessarily violent.
There's a very different type of violence between this, which you can tell is almost like your your B grade action movie type of violence and that of, say, something in The Last of Us 2, which is far
Yeah.
more impactful. But both games are completely aware of what tone they're going for.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess my concluding comment is that I'm nearly done with the game, I think. And I've really had a good time.
I'm glad.
Which again, like that might be me coming in fresh. I don't know. I don't know how a veteran Far Cry fan will perceive the game. Maybe they're expecting more. Maybe it's exactly what they want. I can't tell you. But from my point of view, like I've really enjoyed the freedom to tackle this, Yara and just do weird shit with Danny and have good fun doing so with that character and all the supporting cast.
Yeah, I'm having a better time than I thought I would, again, because I just feel kind of burnt out on the Far Cry series. Especially after I just did not gel with 5 at all. But I think just the personality of the characters is such a breath of fresh air for this franchise. Like Dani Rojas is amazing. I think she's great. So it's not just the franchise leaning on its villains anymore. It actually has a really compelling
It's got
protagonist.
a great cast,
So I'm enjoying that aspect of it, and I do find the design of it all a bit more tuned to feel like I'm actually creating good opportunities for like clever play. So yeah, I'm enjoying the sandbox element. I'm not super hot on the whole RPG stuff. I just find it completely unnecessary. Like when it's like this enemy is weak to this type of bullet and this type of to me in a shooter it's just too much. Like they're trying to add complexity where it just becomes a chore. But
if you play further and you get a mixed kit, like you won't even give a second thought to
which
stuff.
then just begs the question, like, why is it there in the first place?
Yeah.
You know, if you eventually just get to a point where you don't have to think about it, like,
you
know. But I do appreciate from their perspective that they're trying something different with it. So that's cool. I think it's better than Far Cry 5 so far, at least in my perspective, and I think it is a gorgeous setting with some great characters. So I'm excited to play more for sure.
Yeah.
Also, it runs really well on PS5. I, for some reason, didn't expect it to be a 60 frames per second thing, but it is.
It's deceiving
smooth,
because cinematics are not
30.
60 frames. So I had the exact same thought as you. I was like, oh damn, okay, they've obviously locked to 30 because there's a lot of, I don't know, like ray tracing or some shenanigans going on here. But then when you actually get to control your character, it is buttery smooth.
Yeah, it's really good.
And like one thing I can't stress enough, the load times on PS5 are just, I can never go back. It's such a pleasure bouncing around the map like in the blink of an eye. So yeah.
Open world games forever changed by SSDs. You heard it here first.
Never going back.
But yeah, that is Far Cry 6. It's out. When is it out? This Friday, so October 8th.
Thursday or Friday, yeah.
Yeah, Thursday or Friday. So you'll be able to get your hands on it fairly soon. I guess thanks to Ubisoft for providing us both code so that we could check it out early. And we'll obviously be chatting more about it on the Checkpoint Chat podcast. If you are unsure what that is, we record our podcast every Saturday, publish it on Monday. You can find it on pretty much any podcast platform. Checkpoint Chat, just put it in the search and you'll get it there. And yeah, if you want to hear more about Far Cry 6 or just more about games in general, you should definitely check us out.
Yeah, the episode, well, the podcast itself is available on YouTube
as well,
which is generally our YouTube is a mix of the podcast and I break out the reviews and news, so you can choose and play whatever you are most
and get some new footage of what we're playing up there. So yeah, if you like this review, we'd appreciate a subscribe or a like. If you didn't, that's okay. You can also just leave us a comment, tell us what we did right, tell us what we did wrong, and tell us if you're just hyped for Far Cry 6. I think it's going to be good. I think this is maybe a bit of a shot in the arm that the series needed. So yeah, I'm happy.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you on the next podcast. Goodbye.
Goodbye.